1913, the National Woman Party is formed. In 1913, the National Woman Party was created by Alice Paul to fight for the vote for women. Disagreements over the March on Washington and an accusation that she might have even misused funds caused Alice Paul to decide it was time to strike out, become more militant, and create a party that would focus on women's suffrage and a constitutional amendment. That's going to be the National Women's Party. They wanted to pass a constitutional amendment so that a national strategy would be used. You could focus all your resources and energies on fighting for women's suffrage at the national level. Alice Paul and the National Women's Party were more militant. They wanted women's suffrage to remain on the front pages of newspapers and in the spotlight for Americans, and took actions like protests, picketing the White House, and hunger strikes to try and gain support for the amendment. What do the Vikings have in common with the National Women's Party? Well, the same colors, of course. The NWP used purple, gold, and white in banners and sashes. The National Women's Party Silent Sentinels. One of the most controversial protests of Alice Paul and the National Women's Party was when they silently picketed the White House. For over 2.5 years, they protested outside the White House. They remained silent, but used some of Wilson's own words against him to protest. When World War I broke out, their protest became even more controversial. Let's look at what they said on their posters. Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty? Mr. President, what will you do for women's suffrage? Kaiser Wilson, have you forgotten your sympathy with the poor Germans because they were not self-governed? 20 million American women are not self-governed. Take the beam out of your own eye. When Alice Paul made the decision to join the picket line and therefore get arrested, she said, "The time has come to conquer or submit, for there is but one choice, and we have made it." In the end, 200 members of the National Women's Party were arrested for, quote, disturbing the peace or obstructing traffic. When the members refused to pay the fines, they were sentenced to a workhouse. 1920, the 19th Amendment passed. While in the workhouse, Alice Paul and the other members of the National Women's Party went on a hunger strike. When news broke of the hunger strike on the front pages of the New York Times and other newspapers, Alice Paul and the National Women's Party got more support and were released. In the end, the National American Woman Suffrage Association and National Women's Party joined forces to pressure the president to support women's suffrage. Several more factors combined to help women get the vote. Prohibition, or making alcohol legal, had already passed, and women had helped with the war effort. This was going to be one of the main points that President Wilson points out in his address to Congress, asking them to support the 19th Amendment. In 1920, the 19th Amendment passed, giving women the right to vote. Celebrations happened all over the country. Unfortunately, for African American women, the vote would not fully be achieved until much, much later, 1965 to be exact.